Hi guys, welcome back. I'm glad to see you again. If you couldn't tell, I made it. After my little mess up in the preliminary tests, my instructors allowed me to show off my skills again. Of course, illusory magic doesn't put fires out, but it definitely helps keep people calm and evacuate easier. That's what I'll be doing on our runs. They were even gracious enough to promise to teach me some other forms of magic. Of course, I'll be staying focused on my main goal of becoming a famous artist, but it's nice to have this while I have it. Take a look at today's video, and I'll update you when some more things happen. Today's video is going to be a quick little crash course on how I render my metal. It's going to be kind of short, but I would like to preface this with a few key points before I go. The first being that you need to be okay with your art not looking great all the time. During this process, my metal sometimes looks really gross, but you have to trust yourself. Secondly, I personally render on one layer. It makes it easier to add and get rid of the shapes and colors that I want to, all while being able to see the big picture. If that's not something you want to do, don't. There's nothing wrong with that. In this video, I'll be using multiple layers just because this crash course is for a specific shape of metal, the cylinder. It's the easiest to learn, so I think it will be great as a beginner intro into metal. Lastly, a little bit of a piggyback off the last thing, metal shapes can be complex. The metal that you'll be making in your artwork is not the same metal you practice with. You'll be making chest plates, swords, cups, well that one is a little similar, but helmets, constructs, buttons. That's also kinda in many different inorganic shapes, so it's important to understand the reason why specific colors go in specific places. This can be due to light, shade, color, reflection, etc. And unfortunately, I can't cover all of that in this video, so that brings me to my last piece of advice before we get started. Learn how to draw. As condescending as that sounds, I know it's really annoying to hear, but it's true in a sense. Following tutorials, looking at reference drawings, using 3D models, all of these things will help you draw better. And they can all be found on YouTube or Pinterest or obscure third-party apps. Don't just rely on the things you know. Learn more. And be excited to learn more. With that being said, let's get started with this tutorial. We're going to start with the outline and base color. The base color can be gray, of course, but I like to make my gray a little warmer or cooler since it reads better to the eye. There are simple planes that will have different metal renderings, and it makes it a lot easier to render metal if you know how that plane reacts to light and other objects around it. There are 5 colors that I use. All of them are derived from the base color of the metal. 1 is slightly darker than the base, 2 is slightly lighter, 3 is significantly darker, and 4 is significantly lighter. Then lastly, we have the color, or colors. These colors tie your metal into its surroundings so it doesn't look out of place. Apply color number 1 to the edges of your metal, or in practical cases, where the metal is not directly facing light or directly facing a dark object. Color 2 is placed inside of color 1, closer to the part of the metal that is slightly closer to the viewer. Color number 3 is placed towards the edge, or directly in front of a dark object being reflected in the metal. Color 4 is placed where the metal is closest to the viewer or where light reflects brightly off the metal. Next, and stay with me here, you're going to use your Gaussian blur tool to blur the colors. I like to use it up to 24%, and I know it looks weird here, but in a moment it's going to make much more sense. You're going to take this mess of colors and turn it into something real. It's almost like magic. Sorry, I got a little excited. As you can see, we're going to erase around the shape of the first plane we were talking about. You can choose to add the color whenever you want, but just like the brighter colors, the color is reflected from the actual object with that color. Then you just blur it and erase. When rendering metal on concave surfaces, you basically follow the same rules, except backwards. The darker colors will be closer to the inside, and the lighter colors will be toward the edges. Now that we have one consistent plane, I'll show you a little trick that I like to use to make it look like my metal has texture without doing a whole bunch. Take your smudge tool and run it over the colors a couple of times. That's it. It just gives it a more appealing, asymmetrical look that makes it look more believable. Of course, course, it's up to you if you want to do that since it's not actually part of the tutorial. Next up is plane 3. Learning how to render metal on flat surfaces is important, even if you don't use it as much as you think you do. You follow the same process here as well, but you're only really trying to match the look of the convex surface since, realistically, while the surface of the metal may change, the environment around it will continue. Meaning, the direction the reflections on one surface are going will change when on another. To finish this plane, erase to reveal what you actually want to see, and we can move on to the last plane, which, luckily for us, is very similar to plane 2, so this won't take long at all. And there we have it, a cylinder of metal. It doesn't seem super fancy, but the cylinder is one of the important building blocks of character shapes. Just think of all the objects that are cylindrical or have some sort of cylinder on it. Think about it, you can draw pitchers, cups, carafes, bottles, fingers, toes, arms, legs, chains, rings, buildings, towers. Anything that you can think of making in metal can be made when you know how to render the basic shapes. I think that's everything. A bit of knowledge before you go though. I know from experience that these kind of tutorials can feel niche-like it can only apply to one part of one thing you want to draw. If you're new to drawing, I could definitely see why you feel that way. But trust me, the more tutorials you watch, and trust me, there are so many, the more references you look at and experience, the more people you talk to, or classes you attend if you can afford that, the more you will learn. And the internet is a beautiful place when it comes to gaining knowledge. The video after next, I'll make a video about all the great places you can learn about art, improve your drawing techniques, talk with fellow artists, etc. But since this channel is mainly for beginners, since I myself am hardly an expert, I think it's important to realize that you don't become Picasso overnight. Every tutorial that you learn creates an element that ends up in your drawings. From the big things like perspective and color theory, to specific things like how to draw a willow tree, or how to render water falling over a waterfall. You get it. All of it's important, and a little overwhelming. But take your time, and I promise you'll get there. Alright, that's enough for my rambling. Until the next video, I look forward to seeing you guys again. Bye!